In this video, we will explore everyone who currently has active execution dates set for 2025. There were a total of 26 execution dates scheduled in 2025, 6 have been executed, and 7 have been inactive. There are 13 more which are now scheduled. We will explore each case one by one. David Lee Wood, Texas, March 13, 2025. Wood, often labeled by the press as the Desert Killer, was found guilty in 1992 for the rape and homicide of multiple young women in El Paso, Texas, during the late 1980s. Investigators connected him to several victims whose remains turned up in desert locations around El Paso. He had previously served time for a sexual assault conviction in the 1970s. His 1992 proceeding relied on circumstantial proof, eyewitness testimony placing him near those remote sites, and reported admissions made in custody. Wood has consistently claimed innocence, while his lawyers repeatedly pursued additional DNA testing after trial. A jury convicted Wood of capital murder regarding at least one of the so-called desert killings. He received a death sentence in 1992. Throughout the years, his legal counsel has highlighted inadequate or incomplete scientific evidence, as well as potential missteps by his initial defense. On March 11, 2025, shortly before his slated execution, a Texas judge issued a stay to permit further proceedings. As a result, his March 13th execution is currently suspended. Texas utilizes lethal injection, administering pentobarbital in a single dose for capital punishment. If this judicial order is overturned, officials could reinstate the same date or select a different one. But for now, the March 13th execution remains still halted under the court's directive. Jesse Hoffman, Louisiana, March 18, 2025. Jesse Hoffman is scheduled for execution on March 18, 2025, after being found responsible for the tragic death of a young woman in 1996. As Mary Elizabeth, the evidence shows she was forced into a vehicle and later discovered in a wooded area. Hoffman acknowledged being involved in the abduction, but prosecutors asserted he fired the fatal shots. He has long maintained that a second individual, also implicated, was the true shooter. Louisiana courts decided Hoffman was equally responsible for both the kidnapping and its lethal outcome. A jury convicted him of first-degree murder in 1998, sentenced him to death, emphasizing the gravity of taking someone's life during a kidnapping. Over time, Hoffman's appeals have focused on issues like alleged coercion in his statements and possible racial bias in selecting the jury. But state appellate courts have not granted relief. With Louisiana executing very few individuals in recent decades, legal observers believe this warrant might still face further delays. Under current law, lethal injection is the primary method in Louisiana. Unless the courts or officials intervene, Hoffman's date remains set for March 18, 2025. Aaron Gunches, Arizona, March 19, 2025. Aaron Gunches faces an execution date of March 19, 2025, in Arizona, tied to the death of Ted Price in 2002. Authorities say Price was shot and left in a desert region near Mesa. In 2004, Gunches pled guilty to first-degree murder, acknowledging his role and initially opting to forego appeals because he believed punishment was warranted. Later, he allowed his attorneys to file for post-conviction remedies on mental health grounds and transparency regarding the drugs used in Arizona's death chamber. Gunches briefly endorsed his own execution, now raises concerns about the secrecy surrounding lethal injection medications. Arizona statutes still contain an older gas chamber option. While his warrant stands for March 19, 2025, the Arizona Attorney General has suggested reviewing all pending executions before proceeding. This means that, despite his set date, further delays or changes could occur depending on court rulings or updated policies. Wendell Grissom, Oklahoma, March 20, 2025. Set for March 20th, 2025, Wendell Grissom was sentenced to death for the 2003 killing of a 24-year-old colleague named Regina Owens. Prosecutors claim Grissom ended her life by force and disposed of her remains in a creek. Investigators used forensic evidence to establish a connection between him and the crime scene, highlighting DNA test results. Grissom, however, has argued that the death was never intentional. During his 2005 trial, the state presented kidnapping as an aggravating circumstance, leading to a capital murder conviction. Defense attorneys have criticized his representation at trial, suggesting they lack the resources to challenge parts of the prosecution's case. Despite broader questions about Oklahoma's execution procedure, which uses a combination of midazolam, vecuronium bromide, and potassium chloride, Grissom's case reflects the ongoing debate over lethal injection protocols, as some Oklahoma inmates have experienced last-minute changes or temporary stays. Still, his date remains in place. The state often schedules several executions in a short span. If no additional legal actions halt it, March 20th, 2025 marks the day Oklahoma aims to carry out his sentence. Edward Thomas James, Florida. March 20th, 2025. On March 20th, 2025, Florida intends to execute Edward Thomas James, who has been on death row for the 1999 killing of college student Catherine Lowell. Authorities say she was attacked while jogging near campus. Testimony portrayed a violent confrontation. Prosecutors presented DNA results linking James to the scene, along with witnesses who placed him in the vicinity. Though James disputes the accuracy of these tests, multiple rechecks reportedly upheld the findings. During his 2002 trial, the jury voted unanimously, 12-0, in favor of the death penalty, emphasizing the severity of taking a life in such a disturbing manner. Florida's ever-shifting legal framework for capital cases has sparked appeals in many instances. Courts have consistently maintained James's sentence. With Florida carrying out multiple executions in recent years, the state remains relatively active in applying capital punishment. Standard method involves injecting 3 substances: a sedative, drug to impede breathing, and a final compound to stop the heart. Though legal challenges can occur right up to the final moments, James's warrant for March 20th stands. Observers believe he may face limited options to prevent the state from moving forward. Michael Francis Tansey, Florida. April 20th, 2025. Florida has scheduled Michael Francis Tansey for execution on April 20th, 2025, based on his conviction for the 2000 abduction and slaying of a woman named Janet Forstay. Tansey coerced her into her own vehicle outside a Tampa establishment, then traveled across county lines before ending her life. In 2003, the jury concluded Tansey was guilty of murder in the commission of a kidnapping, ultimately recommending capital punishment. Defense lawyers argued issues related to his mental health, suggesting potential insanity or reduced responsibility. Formal evaluations, however, determined he was fit to stand trial. While he has sought post-conviction relief by citing ineffective assistance of counsel and psychological challenges, over the years, Tansey has pursued personal growth, including spiritual outreach behind bars, but these endeavors have not altered his legal standing. Florida uses a multi-drug injection as its primary method. To date, no major hurdles stand in the way of his April 20th execution, though unexpected legal motions could arise in the remaining time. Moises Sandoval Mendoza, Texas. April 23, 2025. Scheduled for April 23, 2025, Moises Sandoval Mendoza was found guilty of ending the life of Lucy Ray in 2004. The incident occurred in Brazos County, where authorities say Mendoza fatally harmed her during a break-in, then attempted to conceal evidence by igniting a fire. A neighbor claimed to have seen him leave the scene holding a fuel container, and investigators uncovered footprints plus blood traces tying him to the apartment. In 2007, a Texas jury sentenced Mendoza to death, pointing to the severity of taking a life amid a burglary. His legal team argued that he was affected by mental health struggles and impairing substances that night. Though courts have not overturned the verdict, Texas typically conducts executions through a single dose of pentobarbital, having ended its prior multi-drug approach. The Lone Star State has consistently maintained the highest number of carried-out death sentences in the country, meaning once a date is set, it often proceeds unless a court intervenes. Mendoza's appeals have so far proved unsuccessful, and without a granted stay, the Department of Criminal Justice will likely follow through on April 23rd. Observers anticipate continued legal challenges, see no confirmed reprieve at this stage. Matthew Johnson, Texas, May 20th, 2025. Matthew Johnson is set to face lethal injection on May 20th, 2025 in Texas, where a jury held him responsible for a 2010 robbery that turned deadly. Prosecutors allege Johnson shot convenience store worker Ali Khan in Houston while attempting to seize under $200 from the register. Although the suspect's face was reportedly covered, surveillance images captured certain physical markers, and Johnson's palm print was located at the site. In 2012, a Harris County jury convicted him of capital murder. Johnson's defense contested these findings, insisting on mistaken identity. However, the court deemed the evidence convincing. His counsel later argued that the county's track record in seeking capital punishment reflects disproportionate targeting of black defendants. Texas applies a single-drug pentobarbital injection as its standard method. Given Harris County's history of pursuing and enforcing capital sentences, many believe Johnson's final date will likely stand, short of an unanticipated stay. Legal experts note that last-minute filings remain a possibility, but the state's approach to scheduled executions tends to be unwavering. Unless the courts discover a compelling reason to halt it, May 20th marks Johnson's pending conclusion. Donnie Middlebrooks, Tennessee, September 24th, 2025. Scheduled for September 24th, 2025, Donnie Middlebrooks was handed a death sentence for his role in a 2001 robbery that ended the life of Chris Randall, a store manager in Jackson, Tennessee. Court documents indicate the victim was discovered bound and shot in the shop's back area. Two others were reportedly involved. They pointed to Middlebrooks as the main actor, ultimately accepting plea deals for lesser penalties. Middlebrooks claimed the associates pinned the responsibility on him to receive lighter sentences. A jury in 2003 concluded the crime involved severe cruelty and decided capital punishment was justified. Throughout the appeals process, his defense presented evidence of a difficult upbringing and substance issues. The courts repeatedly affirmed the original judgment. Following the same format as other older Tennessee cases, Middlebrooks might choose between injection or electrocution, though that detail has yet to be finalized. While Tennessee faces scrutiny over how it carries out capital sentences, the state has kept Middlebrooks on its calendar. Additional legal filings may be submitted right up to the final hour, though no official stay has been issued. Unless appellate courts step in, September 24th stands as the scheduled date for carrying out his sentence. Kareem M. Jackson, Ohio, December 10th, 2025. Set for December 10th, 2025, Kareem M. Jackson is imprisoned in Ohio for the deaths of two men, identified as Antonio Hunter and Terrence Walker, in 1997. Both lost their lives during a planned robbery in Columbus, alleging Jackson forced them to lie down before firing multiple times. Surviving witnesses described a frightening scene and identified him as the individual holding the weapon. The jury in 1998 convicted Jackson of aggravated murder with associated robbery elements, eventually recommending capital punishment. Defense attorneys have pointed to possible racial imbalance in jury selection, noting Jackson is African American while nearly all jurors were not. Similar claims often arise in Ohio's appeals process. Courts have thus far upheld the outcome. Like other Ohio capital inmates, Jackson faces uncertainties around injection drug supply and the broader debate on lethal injection. The state's governor has sometimes postponed execution dates due to these recurring complications, meaning even a set date can shift unexpectedly. Although December 10th remains designated, observers say Ohio's record suggests last-minute changes are entirely possible. Unless new legal or administrative decisions alter his path, Jackson could be placed on the final schedule for lethal injection in late 2025. Harold Wayne Nichols, Tennessee, December 11th, 2025. Harold Wayne Nichols is scheduled for execution on December 11, 2025 in Tennessee. His case stems from the 1988 fatal attack on Karen Pulley in Hamilton County. Prosecutors claimed Nichols entered her home uninvited and caused harm, leading to her death. He also acknowledged additional offenses involving others in the same area, prompting courts to label the Pulley situation particularly severe. During a 1990 trial, jurors found Nichols guilty of first-degree murder and recommended capital punishment, which the judge then enforced. Since then, Nichols has expressed remorse for his actions. Appeals have revolved around testing specific pieces of evidence for DNA, yet no court has agreed to overturn his conviction or sentencing. As in several other Tennessee capital cases, Nichols was first set to die on dates that came and went without going forward, partly because of the ongoing controversy over injection procedures. New warrant places him in line for lethal injection. His crimes were adjudicated before 1999. Whether the state eventually follows through on December 11th will depend on any fresh legal or procedural obstacles that may emerge. Sean Carter, Ohio. He was initially set to face execution on January 22, 2025 in Ohio. Court records link him to a homicide involving a family member, though details of the crime have largely remained confined to public filings. Over time, Carter pursued various appeals, challenging his conviction and sentence, raising arguments about mental health and due process. While the state had planned to proceed as scheduled, officials announced that Carter's execution was rescheduled for November 17, 2027. No current indications suggest a reversal of his death sentence itself, but Ohio's repeated challenges with lethal injection drugs and other logistical concerns often lead to postponements. Carter's capital punishment remains on the calendar, just set for a later date. The inactiveness stems from the legal and procedural steps needed to confirm new protocols, as well as ongoing case reviews. Christopher Sepulvado, Louisiana. Christopher Sepulvado had been on track for a March 17, 2025, execution date in Louisiana. He was convicted in the early 1990s for the brutal killing of his stepson, a crime that drew intense public attention and numerous appeals over the decades. However, Sepulvado's legal proceedings never reached that scheduled day. According to official reports, he passed away on February 22, 2025, from natural causes linked to pre-existing health conditions. Because death occurred prior to any further litigation or decisions on the warrant, the state declared the matter closed. This outcome rendered his scheduled execution date moot, so the case is now categorized as inactive. His passing preempted final resolution of several appeals concerning lethal injection protocols and potential constitutional issues, effectively ending both his sentence and the controversy surrounding his punishment. Larry Roy, Louisiana. Larry Roy's March 19, 2025 execution date in Louisiana was officially labeled inactive once the state withdrew the warrant. While the exact details of Roy's offense and conviction have seen limited public exposure, it is known that he faced a capital sentence for a homicide case tried in Louisiana courts. For undisclosed reasons, likely tied to either procedural complications, ongoing appeals, or concerns surrounding lethal injection, the state chose to remove his date from the execution calendar. This action does not necessarily terminate Roy's death sentence. Rather, it suspends enforcement until or unless the court or the governor selects a new date. Roy's case illustrates how uncertain the capital punishment timeline can be, especially in Louisiana, which has carried out very few executions in recent decades. For now, Roy's execution remains on hold indefinitely. Percy Hutton, Ohio. Originally slated for June 18, 2025, Percy Hutton's execution in Ohio became inactive after officials moved his date to June 21, 2028. Hutton's conviction traces back to the shooting death of Derek Mitchell during what prosecutors described as a dispute that escalated tragically. Possible ineffective legal representation. Ohio's broader challenges with procurement of lethal injection drugs and legal reviews have repeatedly forced capital cases to be pushed back. Reassigning of Hutton's execution date reflects both the state's scheduling adjustments and the ongoing complexities within his appeals. Actual enforcement now awaits 2028, allowing more time for potential administrative or judicial changes that might impact Hutton's ultimate fate on Ohio's death row. Samuel Moreland, Ohio. Ohio authorities originally planned to carry out the death sentence of Samuel Moreland on July 30, 2025, but recent updates list his status as inactive. Officials decided to reschedule the date, moving it to July 19, 2028. Moreland was convicted of killing multiple individuals in a single incident, a case that attracted significant media coverage at the time. Though the courts upheld his sentence, practical factors, like Ohio's ongoing scrutiny of its lethal injection procedures, play a notable role in these repeated postponements. Furthermore, Moreland's attorneys continue to push issues of mental competence and trial phase irregularities. By shifting the execution date, the state effectively grants additional time for final legal considerations. Nevertheless, no indication points to a commutation of his death sentence, so Moreland remains on course for capital punishment once the new date arrives. Douglas Coley, Ohio. Set for September 24, 2025, Douglas Coley's execution was later marked inactive, and Ohio rescheduled it for August 15, 2028. Coley's conviction stems from a deadly event in which prosecutors stated he purposely caused fatal harm under aggravated circumstances. However, specific details about his underlying case have not been widely publicized. What is clear is that Ohio's capital punishment system has seen many stops and starts, largely related to injection drug controversies and court orders. Coley's shift in date suggests an effort to align his case with the future availability of approved methods or substances, while also allowing further appeals to unfold. With nearly 3 more years on the clock, Coley's legal team may use that window for additional motions or evidentiary reviews. Unless dramatic changes occur, he will remain on death row pending the newly assigned date.